Alright, so really quick, I just want to make a real quick tutorial about how to add edge loops in Houdini. So as you can see, we have a cube and then I'm subdividing it. And so basically the idea is, I think one of the most commonly, um, one of the most common uses for edge loops is to kind of like hold shape when you're subdividing. So for example, um, if we didn't want it to turn into a sphere when we subdivide, if we wanted to keep it as a box but just with, still wanted to subdivide, we could use edge loops, add edge loops. And this should work for any situation where you need to add edge loops on a quad-based mesh. So what you're going to do is you're going to go up to so um, the shelf tools, um, it's kind of confusing what to use, but this edge loop tool is actually probably the one that you're looking for. So if I go ahead and just left click this, it will now give me the option to mouse over any ring of edges, and I can add an edge loop. So let's say I want to add one there. And the only thing that's kind of annoying is I hit enter to accept it, and then I gotta do it again to do another one. So what you might want to do is you might want to have like a hotkey for this, um, if you're going to be doing this multiple times. Um, but basically, this is how you would, add your traditional edge loops. So almost done. I need one here. Now the other thing you could do, now if we look at our node tree, every time I do that it adds a polysplit node. So you might be thinking, well, what the hell? There's a polysplit tool over here. Well, the polysplit node actually has two different modes, and so both of those modes are up here, and it gives you easier access to them. What we can do is, let's say I want to get a loop going right through the middle. I can add my edge loop, it's roughly in the middle. But if we look at what's going on here, so if you look at this node and we actually kind of decipher this, we can see that it's essentially creating a loop starting at edge number 6 and ending at edge number 1, and then this next number here is the weight. So if you make this exactly 0.5, it'll put it exactly in the middle. So if I do my primitive numbers, and I bypass this node, you can see here's primitive 6 and primitive 1. I'm actually not exactly sure why you only need 2 edges for it to work. But looking at the documentation, it says, so A, E, B. So A is the number, and then E tells you the mode, and then B is another number. So if we have 6E1, that means cut along this percentage, so cut along 0.5 percentage along edge B of the primitive. Of edge 1 of primitive 6. So it's primitive 6, edge 1. And unfortunately, I don't know how to call up which edge is which. So for example, we know this is primitive 6, but if I change this to example edge 2, and we look at what happens, so that that split it along here. So if I change it to edge 3, I bet you it's going to go back. Yeah. So, sorry, that's a little confusing. I'm going to try to explain that better. So, this is primitive 6, right? And so this is edge 1, 2, 3, and 4 of primitive 6, right? It's a 4-edged primitive. So what this 6e1-0.5 means is find me primitive 6, find the first edge, and cut it on a weight of 0.5. So there it is. So that's if you want to get into kind of the math behind it. So for example, if we want to, let's see. So I'm going to turn off this, and let's see. Sometimes what happens is the every once in a while you'll run into the situation where the user interface window wants you to do something. So I'll usually just I don't know why I can't drag this. Anyway, we'll start here, and we'll add one more. See, I kind of want to clear my selection. But anyway, we'll add one more edge loop right through the middle. And again, to ensure that it's in the middle, I'm going to change this to 0.5. So that should do it. Oh, wait, we need one more here. So, edge loop here, 0.5. All right, that should, if you know anything about subdivision modeling, this should be enough edge loops to where when I subdivide, it should hold its shape nicely. And we see that it basically is. If we take smooth shaded off, that's kind of what you would expect, for the most part, a subdivided cube to look like if you were going to use this method. So hopefully that helps. Like I said, it is a little annoying having to go up and hit edge loop every single time. So, if I was going to be doing a lot of this stuff, I would probably try to come up with a hotkey for that. But that is a look at edge loops and how you do them. And you're going to have a huge node tree, because for every edge loop you do, you're going to have one of these. Except what you could do is, if you're doing, I was trying to think, you could maybe consolidate these operations, but the problem is, once you split it, primitive, like let's say we split at primitive 5, and the next one we're splitting at is primitive 9. Primitive 9 after the split is different than what primitive 9 was before the split. So you do, I think, have to pretty much just have this gigantic node of history, basically. But this can be good and bad. I mean, if you're trying to show someone how you modeled something, right? It's pretty easy to be like, hey, I started with a box, and then I split it here, and then I split it here. It's probably good for tutorials and stuff, because you can see exactly how you modeled something. So I could see that being one possible benefit to something like this. It's kind of like in ZBrush when you have the history at the top, or with the undo slider. But the downside is you are going to get this giant list of polysplit nodes every time you do an edge loop. But anyway, that's how you do it. Like I said, just left click on it and then find your edges, and then hit enter to accept. Alright, that's going to wrap it up.